course, the stream was muted, but I want to welcome you guys to the live stream. We're going to be looking at the Bitcoin death cross, as you can see here on the daily chart, with the 50-day moving average crossing below that 200-day moving average, and why this is very important right now. And what's really interesting with Bitcoin is it's actually not following the S&P 500 anymore. If you guys look at this article that I'll show you right here, you can see it's talking about how Bitcoin right now, starting today, stopped following equity markets. And we all know equity markets has been seeing some major sell-off, and of course Bitcoin followed initially, but now Bitcoin has stopped following equity markets. So we're going to be looking at that. I apologize that the audio was not on. And by the way, I am a little bit sick. I'm actually going to get tested for the virus tomorrow. I don't think I have it, but I'm just going to do it as a precaution. But I am seeing a little bit of symptoms like a sore throat and runny nose, so I'm going to be getting tested for that. But I hope you guys appreciate this live stream here on Wednesday. Like the video if you do so. We're going to just dive right into some technical analysis. We've got a ton of articles to also cover today, but I want you guys to look at what's happening with the Bitcoin technical analysis, because a lot of analysts are just throwing technical analysis out the window right now when we've got a very solid bullish wedge forming here. You can see here, we can see this falling wedge actually holding up right now as the current support level. We'll go ahead and zoom in here so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. You can see we've seen this push down this wick that broke this wedge, but right now we are actually holding inside of this wedge, which is extremely interesting to me because of the fact that this is a very bullish pattern as we can look at these potential levels of support and resistance. So if we were to take this right here, you can see here we've got this bullish wedge forming here where it starts to contract and become smaller as the wedge approaches the lower end. And of course, that is a bullish pattern. So right now, I want you guys to realize what I'm looking at for Bitcoin is if we are able to stay below the 200-week moving average, I am going to say that we're still bearish about Bitcoin. And what I mean by that is if we are not able to go above 5,500, which is this green line right here, as you can see on the top, then I don't think we will see any higher price action for now. And I am still going to be bearish and expect lower price levels just because of the fact that we have yet to see a cure of this virus. And therefore, the panic is probably not going to stop in traditional markets. And therefore, Bitcoin may not continue to see any sort of upside due to the fact that we're seeing so much fear in the market, and therefore people are running to cash. And so I want you guys to realize that it's not going to hurt us to wait and see if we are able to cross above this 200-week moving average for us to then call any bullish signs for Bitcoin. These white dotted lines, by the way, are major weekly and daily support and resistance levels that I've drawn out with my previous TA to look at in the macro and micro trend. And so as you can see, we're currently in this zone where we're still very bearish, and we have that chance of seeing that $5,000 Bitcoin here really soon and consolidate in between this zone, this empty zone here, and even potentially see lower levels. And so we're going to be going over a bullish and bearish case of, sorry, something just got into my eye, unfortunately. I see we've got a ton of people on live right now. D. Jung, Al Racket, Chris, good to have you guys on the live stream. But I want you guys to also look at what I am watching right now when it comes to technical analysis. What's interesting to me is Bitcoin has been following traditional equity markets. And if we go and we look at where Bitcoin is at right now when it comes to timeline in comparison to the S&P 500, for example, you can see Bitcoin had a very intentional correction down to where the price levels were at around October of 2017. As a matter of fact, if we look at where it actually bottomed out as of recent around that $3,900 level, you can see that took us all the way back to around August and July of 2017. And that's, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. That's where we ended up bottoming out. And what's very interesting is when we look at the S&P 500, for example, you can see price levels currently have bottomed out with this current bear cycle all the way back to where we were in May of 2017, that May, June area, which is a little bit further back than where Bitcoin bottomed out at. But you can see here, if we look at the end of this wick, we actually went all the way back to around December of 2016. And so what worries me on the bearish side of Bitcoin, if we are going to be bears here, It's the fact that if Bitcoin intentionally saw a drop to the time frame in which the S&P 500 is pretty much pushing the reset button right now and saying, hey, price levels right now are the same price levels that they were at in December of 2016. So if you buy into the S&P 500 at the current low of 2275, you could have bought in that same share in December of 2016 for the same price. And if we look at that correlation with Bitcoin, what worries me is if we go back to December 2016, you have to understand with Bitcoin, that is a very, very low level when it comes to price action, right? So if we go back to where Bitcoin was at in December of 2016, you can see that actually takes us pretty much at about $1,000, if anything below $1,000. And so that to me is very, very worrisome if we look at the bearish scenario. And so we have to be very careful right now and realize that until we can go above that 200-week moving average of 5,500 and see a daily or weekly close, then things could be worse for Bitcoin. The reason I say that is I don't like the fact, yes, I have this falling wedge drawn out, but I don't like the fact that we wicked below and broke the falling wedge. And when we look at the macro time frame, I'm sure you've seen the logarithmic charts. If you guys have seen that, say something in the chat. But we've all seen the logarithmic trends that we've already broken support with. That to me is very bearish. And understand this, one thing I want you guys to realize is, of course, we are going to be very fearful right now as prices are down. But at the end of the day, when we look at traditional markets, they always end up recovering and seeing newer highs. And understand this, right now with the whole coronavirus outbreak, there's a ton of fear in the market. And of course, people are selling off into cash as their quote unquote safe haven. But realize this, when we finally find a cure, when there's a vaccine out and there's more confidence in the markets, the same way we saw the fastest sell-off, we're most likely going to see the fastest recovery. And so I think this is a very opportune time, not only for equity markets, but for every asset class in general. And why it's important that Bitcoin does sell off right now with equity markets, I think it's a great thing. I think it's amazing that Bitcoin has sold off with equity markets, because understand this, if Bitcoin didn't sell off and we were still at, let's say, a $10,000 Bitcoin, but equity markets are back to where they were in 2016, as a investor, where would you rather put your money at that? Back into Bitcoin where it's still at 10,000, or in equity markets where we know there's guaranteed recovery, at least when we look at the last 100 plus years. And so Bitcoin selling off right now is a good thing in my opinion, because when we do see confidence come back into the markets, now we're going to look at investors that are going to say, okay, well, we've got equity markets, for example, and that's a potential place for me to put my money. Price levels are back to where they were from 2016. Oh, but look, Bitcoin is also back to where it was in 2016. Maybe that's also a place to put my money. And so the same way that we're seeing the fastest sell-off in history in equity markets, and even in Bitcoin, we're seeing major sell-off, it's also going to most likely lead to the fastest recovery. And so right now it's important to realize that the sell-off for Bitcoin is a good thing with equity markets selling off, so that when things become confident, we can see more confidence. And I talked about this in our last video. The way I see this playing out is once we start to see a recovery in equity markets, Bitcoin is not going to correlate with equity markets anymore. It's going to fly right past it, right? Because it was only as of recent that we've started correlating highly with equity markets. So Madron Para says, will Bitcoin go lower? As I just said before, my biggest concern right now is the fact that S&P 500 corrected to a time frame of where it was around 2016 of December. And if Bitcoin were to correct to that level as well when it comes to time frame, that could potentially mean Bitcoin is back at $1,000 or under $1,000. And so it's really important to watch traditional markets right now. And I think that's a very important correlation right now to understand. Now, what's really interesting that could contradict that statement of mine, and I intentionally put this article out there, is the fact that Bitcoin just stopped correlating with the S&P 500. But the reason I don't take this article too much to heart is the fact that it took some time for Bitcoin to follow equity markets. You know, at first, equity markets really saw a big sell-off. Bitcoin was still maintaining over 7,000, 8,000, but eventually it then saw a big intentional correction down. And as we now know, it went back down to where equity markets went back down to when it comes to time frame. And so what's interesting about this article, it says, for the past few weeks, Bitcoin had been following the crashing global markets while the S&P 500 and NASDAQ lost more than 30% over the past month. The primary cryptocurrency is now trading at 50% discount from the highs of mid-February, which, like I said, is an important thing right now, because if equity markets are trading at such a discount, at least Bitcoin can also trade at such a discount as well. And you'll see exactly how it still could be a safe haven asset, because when you look at the end of this article, it says gold crashed at the beginning of the 2008 financial crisis, just as it does now before starting to be a hedge and started soaring. And so it's like the real storage of value assets, they also crash during the recessions, but they end up seeing very fast recoveries when there is confidence back into the market. So you can see here it says, many crypto enthusiasts waited for this moment. Bitcoin was born after the most recent significant financial crisis, the one in 2008. So understand, Bitcoin was born for a time like this. Bitcoin is facing its first real economic collapse, but so far behaving just like any other asset, not the way Satoshi expected it to be. Or is it? We could see the same positive correlation between Bitcoin and the stock markets over the past weeks. However, during the past days, Bitcoin holds firmly, trading inside a range between 5,000 and 5,500. This is despite another plunge of 5 to 6% in the major indices. So understand that right now, obviously Bitcoin is starting to show the fact that it still has a mind of its own, and it's not just going to plunge like the major indices do. However, understand that there's still that potential, and that it's going to be risky until we can have a confirmation of price action above 5,500, which is that 200-week moving average, and a close on a daily candle, and even better, a weekly candle, for us to confirm that we can still potentially see bullish price action for Bitcoin. So I think over the next 2 weeks will be the most crucial time right now for Bitcoin when it comes to a potential bearish or bullish scenario, right? So anything below this wedge of 44.20, I would be extremely worried about, because that means we can potentially correct down to that $1,000 level, bringing us back down to where Bitcoin was at in December of 2016, as we saw with equity markets. And so it's a very, very crucial time right now. And I'm going to pull up my micro chart here with some major levels mapped out already. You can see those white arrows, major weekly support and resistance levels, and then that green right there being that 200-week is what we're watching right now for Bitcoin. These are the major levels. Pay attention to this chart as we start to head into some questions from our live audience on YouTube and Twitter. And we're also streaming on TradingView right now, which is interesting for the first time. And so as we go into more depth of what's happening right now, I want you guys to realize that when we look at Google Trends as well, there's a lot that can be said by Google Trends. You can see here, it says unemployment benefits, when we look at the trend, is seeing a huge spike. And what that shows me is there is a potential recession around the corner. Now, how bad this recession would be, in my opinion, it will not be as bad as other recessions, due to the fact that it happened so fast. I was even reading an article today by Ray Dalio saying that he did not even expect this to happen. And Bridgewater, which in 2008 did very well and saw positive gains amongst all other hedge funds that lost a lot of money, also said that they caught this very unexpectedly and did not prepare properly, and also lost money from this huge coronavirus outbreak tanking the markets. And so what's also interesting is if we look at other trends here, right, we type in buy stocks, right? So we can look at the negative, but we can also look at the positive here. So buy stocks here, also seeing a huge increase in interest, right? When we look at buy Bitcoin, also seeing a huge interest, right? So not only is unemployment benefits increasing, but we're also seeing an increase in buy stocks or buy Bitcoin, because people are realizing this is an opportunity. And I think that can be said by this crypto and fear index, showing that we are in extreme fear right now. And as we've talked about in the past, extreme fear can be a sign that investors are too worried, and that could be a potential buying opportunity. So I think it's very interesting that we're seeing that with Google Trends. Now, unfortunately, when we look at confirmed transactions per day, we are seeing that drop significantly. And this is no surprise, just realizing the fact that a lot of people are going to cash and quarantining themselves right now at home and there's just not a need for them to have transactions through the Bitcoin blockchain, right? We look at hash rates. As it's becoming more unprofitable to mine, we're seeing the hash rate drop. Miners are falling off the cliff. Is that a worry to me? I don't think it's that big of a worry, but at the end of the day, we have the halving coming up and we want to see more hash rate in the network. But right now, of course, every chart's going to be down. You look at asset classes amongst every industry, everything is down right now. So it's not a surprise to me. I just see it as an opportunity that we will potentially see a very fast recovery, knowing that this happened so fast. And so I want to cover a couple headlines, and we will take some questions from our live audience here. One thing to realize is the fact that you can see China in orange. This is showing their cases of the virus, because at the end of the day, this is the fundamental reason all this is happening right now. You can see they've started to balance out. And so I do see here, obviously the yellow, which is other locations with viruses, is seeing a skyrocketing amount of cases. I do think that as the weeks progress, just like China finally figured itself out, we're also going to start figuring this out in other countries. And that's when I think we will see more positivity. And I wouldn't necessarily go all in on any market right now until there is a cure or a vaccine announced, being the fact that that is what everyone is fearful about. And once that fear can subside, then of course we will see a lot more confidence in these markets that have developed way more than they were at in 2016. Therefore, we know it's at such a great discount and value right now. So understand here, when we look at major market indices, still seeing major 1,000-point drops almost on a daily basis here with the Dow. We go to indices futures. You can see tomorrow not looking so well, almost 1,000 points just at the open most likely. So things are still heading down. Things are still very risky, and I would be very careful right now. You can see major extreme action being implemented by the Feds, pledging $1 trillion a day in overnight repo loans. That's a big stimulus. Of course, they don't want to call this a bailout, but at the end of the day, they are bailing out companies just like they did in 2008, which obviously is a factor that we just don't know the result of until we look back at it a year from now and say, was this a good decision or a bad decision, right? Treasury and IRS to delay tax payment deadline by 90 days. Very interesting that they're doing this. Another article that's pretty important. I'm not going to go into too much of this. I am sick once again, so, wish me that I get better here very soon, but I'm not going to miss a video as we are now back on our Monday, Wednesday, Friday live stream schedule. So you guys can see another headline. We're looking at sending checks to Americans immediately. The Trump administration was considering offsetting the economic burden of the corona pandemic by immediately cutting checks to Americans. So that's very interesting because we've not seen that happen in a very long time. So this is almost like a universal basic income strategy that's being implemented temporarily to offset all of the layoffs and all of the people that just don't have work right now amongst this viral outbreak. And so very interesting to look at these charts right now and realize what's happening. But just to give you guys a summary of what to watch for when it comes to Bitcoin, like I said, until we can go above this green, which is the 200-week moving average, I am not going to be bullish about Bitcoin. And that's because of the fact that we have that big potential of seeing the $1,000 level now that we've already seen a candle close below the 200-week moving average, which is a moving average that in the past has held very strong for Bitcoin, as you can see, as it did in December of 2018. And we also have that opportunity and potential to go down to $1,000 of Bitcoin, because we need Bitcoin at a discount if equity markets are going to be at such a discount, right? It's almost necessary that Bitcoin is at a discount. But guess what? The real question is, what's going to go up faster when things recover and there's more confidence in the market? I'd love to hear your guys' opinion in the comments and in the chat. Chris says, kind of like socialism, LOL. I think it's necessary. It's almost like a balance between socialism and, capitalism, right? Capitalism when things are going good, but when the country needs the government because it's, something that's uncontrollable and it's not at the fault of the citizens, I think it's important to apply some socialist aspects into the economy and into the country in order to offset this unpredictable black swan event, right? I think it's important. So thanks for mentioning that, Chris. Abe said $1,000 check. Wasn't that what Andrew Yang suggested? I mean, we've heard 1,000. Somebody's heard 5,000. Abe says, Trump is destroying the economy. I'm going to buy more Bitcoin with my check. I think Bitcoin is going to be just fine. At the end of the day, every asset class is dropping right now. And I'm so glad Bitcoin is dropping right now, because guess what? Bitcoin was still at $10,000. Why would anybody want to invest in it when equity markets are back to the prices they were at in 2016? And equity markets have just as much confidence as Bitcoin. I mean, I would say Bitcoin, in my opinion, for the optimist and for the futurist, is a lot more of a potential rewarding asset than equity markets that have trillions of dollars in them versus Bitcoin, which is still under $1 trillion. And so when you think 10 years from now, what's going to potentially 50x or 100x, it's either the $1 trillion asset or the one that's still under $1 trillion. I would say the one under $1 trillion has a better potential than the one over $1 trillion, right? If not dozens of trillions, right? And so understand that obviously S&P 500 people are confident in equity markets with overall growth amongst any recession, amongst any downturn. And so people are going to want to buy equity markets when confidence is back in the market. They're just waiting to get confirmation of a bottom. And that's really going to come once we start to see these coronavirus cases level out. And so the real thing to watch right now is what's happening with this virus. When is the cure going to come? When is the vaccine going to be implemented? Because that's when we're going to start to see confidence in the market. And of course, if markets are looking like this, and I had a $100 million check and I could invest it anywhere, I'd put the 100 million in equity markets if Bitcoin was still at 10,000. But now investors are going to go on charts and say, okay, well, equity markets are pretty down. Oh, dang, Bitcoin's pretty down too. Why don't I put 50 in equity and 50 in Bitcoin so I can diversify now? And so it's important for Bitcoin to be at a lower price right now. And I think it's good that it's at a lower price. And so is there going to be lower price levels? Just by the way it's going, the trend is your friend. We're in a downtrend. I'd say yes. I'd say there's going to be lower levels. I'd say 1,000 would be a great price for Bitcoin. Then we can really, really stack up on it. And the real hodlers are going to be rewarded when we see the fastest recovery in history of equity markets, because we saw the fastest decline, and that typically will result in the fastest recovery, right? And so I think it's important that everything is happening the way it is. Even Ray Dalio, he said, I wasn't expecting this. We lost money. We didn't know. We should have mitigated our risk and sold our assets. So do you think oil prices dropping are affecting the market as well? Of course, oil affects the market, Topher. It always does. It's sad because in the U.S., in order to stay profitable as a petroleum company, barrels got to be going for at least $40, if not high 30s. And right now they're going for $20, $25 a barrel. That's very, very bad for the American petroleum companies. We're most likely going to be purchasing offshore. Obviously, it's affecting the economy. It's going to affect a lot of jobs, unfortunately, in that industry. And I was actually going to, when I was in college, I was going for petroleum engineering. And so, it's a very, very profitable, lucrative market. But at the end of the day, all that planning and stuff doesn't come in handy when it's not a profitable place to be in. And right now it's just not looking profitable for the U.S. companies. So Dejan says, you must be a CNN watcher. I wouldn't say that. No. Personally, I mean, we're not going to get into Fox and CNN, MSN. I don't even watch the news. I'm always looking at credible sources. I'm always looking, if the president's addressing something, I'll watch what he's saying. I'm not going to watch the news and get their opinion on what he's saying. I like to interpret things for myself and then look at other experts that I follow. Andrew Pomp, great fan, or Anthony, what's his name? Man, I'm sick right now. One of my side effects is confusion. So, actually been working to my advantage with the markets. Been trading very well. We caught a really good short, hit all targets yesterday. But I am a little bit sick right now. But yeah, APOP, if you guys know APOP, great person to follow. So Eric says, could you review the monthly time frame? I don't like going too much in the monthly time frame, just because not many people consider the monthly time frame. You can see even here, you could say acted as support, but we never even touched the monthly. We broke through the monthly, which is sad. But at the end of the day, we have to realize that at the current state, a lot of the TA doesn't matter as much, but I still think it does. A lot of people say it doesn't, but I think it does. It's really hard to tell how far this will sell off. It's a falling knife right now, and it's really because of equity markets. If equity markets continue to see a major sell-off, I don't see why Bitcoin is not going to follow. And it's not because Bitcoin is following the markets, because it's proven to us even in the last few days that it's not going to just copy everything the market does. But at the end of the day, we have to realize if markets are at an extreme discount, we want Bitcoin at an extreme discount so that when liquidity flows back into markets from cash, that we see a major push with Bitcoin as well. And nobody's going to buy Bitcoin if equity markets at a way better value and discount than Bitcoin. And so Kelly says, Anthony Pompolino. There you go. Thank you. What's your opinion on XRP? I don't like XRP. I don't like Brad Gardinghouse's his strategy of selling XRP to fund company endeavors. Just doesn't make sense to me for investors to put money in a token and for him to liquidate that token in order to fund, their company. I think that's the opposite of what it should be. I mean, I think he should not touch the coin and sell it and just let the value be what it is, So Josh said XRP is going to be 5 cents. Jory says, spoke to a friend tonight that inspects welds for oil and gas in Texas. Said they're shutting down jobs, capping the pipe and filling the hole. It's not worth it at these prices. Sad. Very, very sad. Kelly says, Russia can hang with $25 a barrel for 10 years. Should be interesting. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think they'd prefer higher prices for less work. But, if they want to become degraded and devalued like that, then let it be, right? I think at the end of the day, our economy, it's not going to follow oil. I mean, oil's been going down for a very long time while the economy has been doing well. I think the initial drops in oil has a huge effect. If we pull up oil here, we can see oil on a weekly time frame has been downtrending. It's been very volatile. You can even see here August 2014, May 2014 to February 2016, we saw a major drop in oil. But when we look at traditional markets, you can see August 2014, right over here, traditional markets to 16, it wasn't as affected. It was continuing to go up. You can see August here, S&P at 19 just started hitting 2,000, and at one point it topped out at 2137. So I think the way oil works, at the end of the day, you can see as oil started to increase, we'll pull up a double chart here. Oil definitely has an effect, but I don't think it's a major effect. I think it's usually the initial big pushes up or down that affect the market more. But you can see when we look at these time frames, when S&P really started seeing a push up, oil started going down, right? It started consolidating. But when oil started going up, we saw a very, very rapid increase in the market. So it almost amplifies what's happening in the markets. So I think that's important to watch there. But not as important as, just the overall fundamentals right now. That's really what matters right now. It's the fundamentals, and the real fundamentals are in this chart. It's just looking at this virus and realizing the fact that the more bad news that comes in the press, the more people are going to be selling off in markets. And so it's the most important part, in my opinion. So Cam says, Naeem, please message when you get a chance, Discord or Telegram. I've been very busy and sick, so just hold off. I got a ton of messages right now that I haven't been able to respond to, and my first priority is just trades, of course. I'm a trader, and so I need to prioritize that over anything. But when I can, I'm able to make content, and even beyond that, I'm able to respond to people personally and do that. But when it comes down to me contracting and minimizing, I'm focused on my trading. I'm focused on my content at the end of the day. So Adel says, by far one of the best thing I did is to join Traders Profit Club. Naeem, thank you. Been a member for over 2 years. I learned a lot. Thank you so much. I know we've got members that have been with us for years. Appreciate you, Mr. Aziz. We've tried our best to just not be like everyone else and post 100 signals a day. Even though we have 11 analysts, I make sure that they're very focused on, actually we have 10 now. We lost one recently. But I'm always focused on them posting signals that are quality over quantity at the end of the day, because it matters more to me. And so TradingView doesn't work on my computer. What other sites can I use? Majran, Coinigy, if you're only looking at crypto, but TradingView is by far the best platform for mapping out any sort of equity or any sort of asset when it comes to charts. Benji says, got hit with a 5.7 earthquake here in Utah, already on lockdown. Gives me time to trade. There you go. Yeah, I love going to Provo. out in Sundance. Powder Mountain, one of the nicest mountains I've ever skied. That's a little bit north near Eden. Beautiful place, Utah, man. Mormon country, huh? Otto says, we're just getting started with this virus. Hold on for the ride. The next couple of weeks will be brutal. Hey, the more brutal it is, the faster and nicer and harder we'll recover. So it is what it is. Chris says, not a threat to Saudi. Says ski resorts are closed. I wouldn't be surprised. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you appreciated this live stream, make sure to like the video. Sorry for the technical difficulties at the start, but I wanted to make sure you guys realized what's happening right now. Until Bitcoin is above that 200-week moving average, we are bearish, and until it is above that, we are very bearish. And that's what I will keep you guys informed on. I'm not going to sit here and say that we found the bottom already. No, that's not the case. We are still in a big downtrend, and there's very big potential that we see lower price levels. And the more we see discounts in equity markets, the more Bitcoin is going to have to be discounted. And so realize that, guys. So thank you so much for tuning in. That was the message for today. It was the fact that we have this death cross coming up. Does it really matter to me? I don't think so, because of the fact that we had a death cross here, and as soon as that death cross occurred, Bitcoin shot up to 10,500 from 7,300. But then when we look at other death cross in the past, you can see here, when there was a death cross here, Bitcoin also shot up, but then every single time we've seen a death cross, we've eventually led to lower price levels. Even with this one, we saw that big push up, we eventually bottomed out at 6,400 from around 7,400. And so every death cross so far has led to lower price levels. I don't think it's going to matter as much. Death crosses typically mean bearish trend, right? This golden cross didn't lead to much either. And so I don't think it's really, there's just so much volatility right now. We look at the VIX, we look at the CBOE volatility index. There's so much volatility in the markets right now. It's hard to look at a lot of TA other than market structure. And really it's the fundamentals right now. We're seeing record volatility compared to what we saw in 2008 when we had the housing crisis and the global, the Great Recession. And so just realize things are going crazy right now. Another thing I want to point out is I'm not too worried about this unemployment benefits being a trend. And the reason I say that is in 2008, you didn't have Uber, you didn't have Airbnb, you didn't have all of these apps like Postmates and Instacart where any person like you and I can go and just create a quick side hustle. Now we have those things. So as soon as we start to see confidence in the market, as soon as we start to see more, more cases of this virus go away and cured, and we start to see things and the light at the end of the tunnel, I believe that things will recover really fast. People will find sources of income a lot faster than they did in the past. And I think that it's not too big of a worry when it comes to unemployment. That's why we're at record unemployment rates right now. But of course, that's going to change this month and next month once the data comes out. And so I'm not too worried about that. I think this will be a quick recession. Do I think we're heading into recession? I think if we are, it might be very, very quick. I don't think it will last too long. The same way it happened fast, I think it will go fast. And so, have your emergency funds set in place. Create a side hustle. If I were you, start trading. This is the time to learn how to trade. These are typically the times that you see the best trades. I think our Forex signals, we haven't hit a stop in almost 2 weeks. Thousands of pips in profit from our analysts, 7-figure analysts that are posting their trades. Our crypto signals, we very rarely have hit stops. We're seeing some very good volatility and very good trades in this market right now. So trading is an extra source of income for a lot of you guys. That's what got me out of my corporate job when I had a 6-figure corporate job. It got me out because I was able to trade. And so learn a side hustle, keep yourself safe. But most importantly, make sure your health is okay. I need to get tested tomorrow. I'll let you guys know. Hopefully I don't got the coronavirus. If so, it's not that bad so far. So, of course, it's serious for others. Sometimes it's not as serious for others, but I don't think I got it. We'll see. So thank you guys so much for coming. Little Romeo on Twitter. We are ending the live.